Something moved through that clearing 3 nights ago. The trail camera caught it at 2:47 in the morning. You can pause on the frame and study it as long as you want. Most people do. Because the size is wrong. The head is wrong. And whatever this animal is, it has been following the same deer trail for 4 nights in a row. The body weighs somewhere around 60 pounds. Most people picture a coyote as a lean, rangy thing, the kind of animal you glimpse crossing a highway out west, ribs showing, moving fast. This is not that animal. This is something older, something the eastern forest made over the course of 2 centuries, without anyone watching closely enough to notice. To understand what you're looking at, you have to go back to a forest that no longer exists. Before the farms, before the roads, before the logging crews, the eastern woodlands were already occupied. Not by coyotes, by wolves. Their size let them bring down deer. Their presence kept smaller hunters in check. Their territory stretched across much of the eastern continent, a boundary as real as any fence, enforced by tooth and weight. For the animal that would eventually become this thing on your screen, that boundary held. Canis latrans, the barking dog. It lived across the western and central parts of North America. It could eat almost anything: mice, rabbits, insects, fruit, carrion. Built for survival in open country. But the wooded east was wolf country. Moving into wolf country meant losing food, losing a den, or being killed. So coyotes stayed west. Until people dismantled the order that kept them there. During the 1800s and into the early 1900s, logging crews moved through the eastern forests and didn't stop. Farms spread across land that had been thick woods for thousands of years. Roads split the forest into pieces, and then came the wolves. Shot, trapped, poisoned. In much of the northeastern United States, their howls faded out 1 county at a time. The land they'd held for centuries went quiet. And something in that silence was an invitation. Coyotes moved in, not through one door. Their spread followed 2 paths, one moving east through the south, another pushing through southern Canada and around the Great Lakes. The northern path led into stranger ground. In parts of Ontario and nearby Canada, a few wolves had survived. When coyotes reached that territory, something happened that nobody was tracking at the time. They met, and they bred. Coyote and wolf. The young survived, had young of their own. Wolf genes began moving east inside a growing coyote population, silently, invisibly, carried in blood that still looked like a coyote from 100 yards away. This wasn't one night in the woods. It happened across many meetings, many years, many animals, but something in the northern groups was quietly, measurably changing. They were getting bigger. The proof turned up in museum drawers. Scientists pulled coyote skulls from collections across North America, old bone, specimens gathered over decades, and measured them with calipers. The northeastern skulls were larger, bigger jaw, broader crown, a head shaped by something beyond the western plains. When researchers mapped the spread using range records and genetics, the numbers became difficult to ignore. Coyotes had crossed the northeastern United States in roughly 90 years. 90 years. For an animal once held west by wolves, that is a fast move across a continent. But the 2 fronts hadn't moved at the same speed. The northern front, the one carrying wolf genes, moved about 5 times faster than the southern one. DNA testing eventually pulled back the last layer. On average, eastern coyotes tested as about 64% coyote, 13% gray wolf, 13% eastern wolf, 10% domestic dog. Not half wolf, not a new species, still carrying the same scientific name it always has. but carrying something older underneath. Something that came from an animal people had spent generations trying to erase. Those numbers are averages. They aren't stamped on every animal. Genes move through populations like ink through water. The color shifts, spreads unevenly, fades in some places and deepens in others. That's why the word coy wolf misleads people. It sounds like one fixed thing. Half coyote, half wolf. Neat, definable. The real story is less neat than that. Size doesn't make a coyote into a wolf. It doesn't give one a pack. It doesn't mean every deer track ends in a kill. But it changes what an animal can attempt. A small coyote sees a full-grown deer as a wall of legs and sharp hooves. A larger animal still faces that risk, but carries more weight behind its bite. It moves through deep snow without burning out. It holds its ground at a carcass. With a mate nearby, or grown young from the previous season, it may have a real chance against a deer already weakened by cold. That is a useful edge in a winter forest. Eastern coyotes eat rodents, rabbits, berries, insects, carrion. They also eat deer. But deer hair and scat doesn't tell you how that deer died. A bone near a den doesn't prove a healthy animal was chased down. The woods don't leave clean reports. Now return to those tracks in the snow. The deer moved through that clearing just after midnight. Long, unhurried strides. The broad-headed animal followed about 20 minutes later. It may have been hunting. It may have been tracing a scent that led nowhere. Or it may have simply been moving the way it always moves, through territory that once belonged to something else, carrying genes from that something else, inside a body shaped by 200 years of change. Then, it stepped into the dark timber. Its tracks crossed the deer's and disappeared. The wolves were removed from these forests. A small part of them returned inside the hunter that took their place. If that left you with questions, that's the point. Next time, we're following a creature that hasn't been documented in this region for over a century, until last spring, when cameras started catching something moving at the edge of the frame that nobody could immediately identify. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. Every video on this channel starts with something in the frame that doesn't quite make sense and ends with a reason it should.